You only need to take a quick look at the new TVS Ronin in person and a glance at its spec sheet to understand that TVS has built this motorcycle to take a bite out of Royal Enfield's large and delicious pie. It has modern retro looks, that new engine is all about low RPM effortlessness in the city, and it's priced really well. But I bet that TVS never imagined that Royal Enfield was going to price the new Hunter this aggressively. These are both the top models here, and the Hunter costs almost exactly the same as the Ronin, and it comes with a 350cc engine from the Classic and the Meteor that we've all really grown to like. This is going to be a very interesting story. It turns out that while the top spec models of the TVS and the Enfield are similarly priced, the dapper ash color scheme on this Hunter is actually about 4,000 rupees cheaper than the Ronin that we have here, which just goes to show how aggressive the Enfield's pricing is. Now, while the Ronin is meant to be TVS's attack on RE's market share, the new Hunter 350 is RE's attempt at expanding its own market share. This is a smaller, lighter and much more nimble bike compared to the existing Classic and Meteor, and it's clearly aimed at newer riders as well as riders who are new to the Royal Enfield brand. As for the Honda CB350 RS, specifications wise it is a rival to the Hunter, but we haven't included it here because the Honda costs far more than either of these bikes. To know what we think of Honda's new 350cc platform versus the RE 350 platform, check out our comparison reviews with the Meteor 350 and the Classic 350. But for now, let's talk about what these two bikes here have to offer. When it comes to sheer design, I think the Hunter is easier on the eyes. It has a better sense of proportion and there are no fussy or strange design details. The Ronin meanwhile stands out with its funky LED headlamp and that gold coloured USD fork. But when you park these two bikes side by side, the one thing that really catches your attention is that the Ronin looks like the larger motorcycle. That's primarily down to the Ronin's larger and unusually shaped fuel tank. Its thicker upside-down front suspension fork and the wider seat also help. In comparison, the Hunter is lower and slimmer, and its more compact dimensions will certainly appeal to newer, less confident or smaller riders, although existing RE fans certainly don't seem to care for it. While the Ronin appears larger, it also has some strange design touches, like that huge chain cover which is designed to look like the belt drive system on a cruiser motorcycle. Look at it from the other side though and you'll see just how unnecessarily large it is. The Ronin also has no real off-road abilities, but it still comes with blocky pattern TVS Rambler tires. On the other hand, it also has some nice things like the adjustable levers, stylish mirrors, funky LED indicators, and that cool looking LED strip that doubles up as a brake lamp. The Hunter is a compact motorcycle, but it also fits riders of most shapes and sizes quite comfortably. The foot pegs are a little rear set, there's a slight lean down to the handlebar, and it has a hint of sportiness to it, but it is well judged and quite comfortable overall. The Ronin meanwhile, this motorcycle actually fits like you would expect a Royal Enfield to. You sit bolt upright and the foot pegs are quite forward set. This riding position reminds me of the Classic 350. This motorcycle also has a wider and softer seat, and between the two, this is the more comfortable riding position. Clearly, both motorcycles here are designed to excel within urban confines, and they have engines that strive to offer generous amounts of low-end performance. The engines here are interesting because this is one area where both bikes are very similar, but they're also very different. The TVS gets a brand new oil-cooled 4-valve 225.9cc engine that produces about 20 horsepower and 20 Newton meters of torque. The main figure here to note is that the Ronin produces its peak power at just 3,750 rpm, which is even lower than the Enfield. Meanwhile, the Hunter uses the very same 350cc engine from the Classic and the Meteor, with the same gearing and the same power figures. Power-wise, the Hunter is almost exactly the same as the Ronin, but its larger engine is able to produce a much bigger torque figure. So, those are the similarities, but the big differences come in how these engines sound and feel. The Ronin has a smooth revving engine with a peppy exhaust sound, and it's very much what you would expect from a TVS engine. The RE motor feels very different, with a slow, thumpy beat at low revs, although it smooths out as the RPMs go up. In fact, at higher revs, the Enfield engine actually produces less vibration than the TVS. When it comes to the 5-speed gearboxes, once again, The RE has the smoother and more precise shift feel of the two.
The TVS engine is really quite short-geared, and within the city at the same speeds, this motorcycle can easily hold 1 or even 2 gears higher than the Hunter. The other side to that is that on the highway, this engine sounds and feels like it's revving quite high, especially above 80 kph. Now, neither of these motorcycles is about long-distance, high-speed cruising, but at about 90 to 100 kph, the Hunter feels like the more relaxed motorcycle.
There really is quite a big difference in character between these two engines, and the Hunter's gentle beat and effortless nature is something we really enjoyed. The TVS is superb in the city, but its engine gets quite loud and a little harsh at high cruising speeds or during quick overtakes. Overall, the Enfield has the nicer, more characterful engine here. We also put both motorcycles through our full testing procedure, where it turns out that the Ronin is the quicker machine in every measurable parameter, but the differences are not that big. As for fuel efficiency, the shorter geared Ronin beats the Hunter in the city, but the Enfield has the advantage on the highway. Those figures are decent, but we did expect a bit more from the lighter Ronin with its smaller engine.
So there isn't a huge difference in terms of performance or fuel efficiency, but one of the things that puts me off the Hunter's powertrain is its heavy clutch. Now, I get that customers for the Classic 350 and the Meteor 350 may be okay with that, but this Hunter is meant to attract newer riders and new riders into the Royal Enfield family, and I'm not so sure how well they will get along with this, because if you get stuck in a heavy traffic jam, this becomes quite a workout.
In fact, the Hunter's clutch is actually a little heavier than the clutch on the Classic 350. Meanwhile, the Ronin has an extremely light clutch action, and it comes with a slip assist clutch. Speaking of light, the Ronin also weighs a whole lot less than the Hunter, despite the fact that the Hunter is currently the lightest Royal Enfield that you can buy.
The Ronin weighs 20 kilos less than the Hunter, and you do feel that difference. But to be fair, this is also a light steering and easy bike to ride, and it also helps that both bikes have nice and low seats. However, there is one other issue that we have with the way the Hunter rides.
Another big difference between the two bikes is in the design of the suspension. The TVS takes a modern approach with an upside-down fork and a monoshock, while the Hunter keeps it retro with its telescopic fork and twin rear shock absorbers. There is no issue with that, but the problem lies in how the Hunter suspension has been set up.
Allow me to demonstrate. Now, as you can see, the front end on the Hunter is quite soft and is also a little underdamped on the rebound stroke. You can see the bike bounce before it settles to a stop. The rear end, however, is really quite rigid. And if you live in an area with bad roads, you're going to feel the impact of that. Now, I wouldn't call this horribly uncomfortable, but I wouldn't call it comfortable either.
In case you're wondering, the Hunter's rear shocks come set with minimum preload from the factory, so there's no way to dial in more comfort without going for aftermarket shocks, which can get quite expensive. In comparison, the Ronin setup feels supple and plush. In fact, when we put a pillion on board, it felt a little too soft and you'd need to raise the preload to prevent the shock from bottoming out. Speaking of, neither bike has excellent pillion comfort, but the Ronin's seat and foot peg placement are quite nicer than the Hunter's. A lot of folk online were also concerned about the Hunter's ground clearance, but we haven't faced that issue so far, even with the weight of a pillion. And that's probably one of the only areas where the firm shocks are a benefit. Handling-wise, the Hunter is definitely the more fun and connected machine, while the TVS feels light and easy, but its raked-out front end isn't as communicative, and the foot pegs can scrape more easily. In terms of brakes, both are just about adequate in terms of power and feel, although the actual braking distances in our tests were quite impressive and nearly identical. And finally, we move on to the area of features, where as you'd expect, the TVS absolutely takes the win. The Hunter comes equipped with a neatly designed USB port as standard, and you get dual-channel ABS on the top models of both these bikes. You can also option RE's Tripper navigation display as an optional extra, along with a number of other well-designed accessories. However, the TVS has much more to offer as standard, including its LED headlamp, a more detailed digital instrument console, 2 ABS modes, and a whole bunch of features enabled via Bluetooth connectivity and a dedicated mobile app. On top of that, there's also the slip assist clutch and TVS's glide-through technology, which allows the bike to gently creep forward in slow-moving traffic without any throttle inputs. All of this comes together to make the Ronin a much easier and nicer bike to ride within the city. As for the Hunter, it seemingly has a lot of positives and only 2 real issues going against it. Unfortunately, both those issues are impossible to ignore because you have to constantly deal with them and there isn't any easy fix.
I do like the Hunter quite a bit. It has a very characterful, torquey engine. I think it's a nicer looking bike here, and there's no doubt that there's a whole lot more pride of ownership associated with the Royal Enfield badge. However, there's also no getting away from the fact that the Ronin is the better value for money deal. It is the nicer bike to ride, and to us, it's the better bike here.